Well, hi, Nick. I'm Charles Chase. I'm currently running a nonprofit called the UnLab with my partner and wife, Kate McKinnon. And it's a nonprofit dedicated to developing breakthrough technologies for the world, for people, for the biome. And we do that work in conjunction with some of the defense research agencies such as DARPA and Office of Naval Research, who are very interested in that sort of disruptive breakthrough technologies. Prior to that, I ran the Revolutionary Technology Programs team for the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. And our job there was also to develop disruptive breakthrough technologies that could have a significant impact on our strategic capabilities.
And how many years did you work for Lockheed Martin and the Skunk Works?
Oh, 30 plus years. Yeah. So I retired, almost 2 years ago now. And so we did some really pretty interesting things. Some of the stuff that's been in the public is like a new approach to hot fusion called compact fusion. And that's very exciting because it's a way of potentially providing electricity and energy to everyone in the world and hopefully eliminating conflict by providing abundance for people.
Well, so you and I both have that connection where aerospace and defense people by training and by career. Is there scope, in your opinion, for aerospace and defense sector involvement in combating global challenges?
Yeah, I think certainly they have the capability, the resources, the talent, and also the technologies needed to really combat and deal with some of the global challenges that we currently have. And if you look at some of the things that we're used to using every day now, like GPS or the internet or chips, those things were developed by the military originally for military purposes and then repurposed for other sort of things. I think the defense and aerospace industry can take a more active role in directly developing things for the global challenges.
So what sort of, I mean, you've talked a little bit about some of those technologies that have migrated from aerospace and defense through into our world now. And of course, they're everywhere, as you've said. But what sort of technologies now do you think that are sort of currently going on within the aerospace and defense community could migrate to combating global challenges?
Well, like I mentioned about compact fusion, that's a great example of that's something currently being developed at the Skunk Works, and that can really help with global energy challenges. There's still almost 1 billion people in the world without electricity today. It's hard for me to imagine, and I'm sure for most people to imagine not having electricity. There's also technologies associated with artificial intelligence. I think that if you look at the application space of things like tackling global health, tackling new ways of doing energy storage for renewables, tackling ways of capturing carbon, CO, all those areas really is somewhere that the defense and aerospace industry have technologies that can help. But also, maybe more importantly is the skill set and the infrastructure needed to actually tackle these problems at scale. And I think that's something that this sector is really good at, is tackling large problems that are really system level problems and bringing together the right technologies, the right people, the right teams to be able to really address something that is very complex and very hard for a small organization to really deal with appropriately. the aerospace industry is really good at complex system engineering. And I think that's some of the things that it's going to take, in addition to new technologies, just, how do we get the infrastructure in place? How do we scale it? And that's something that the industry is very capable of doing.
So this intervention, if it's to take place at scale, could really play out in all sorts of domains as far as aerospace and defense is concerned. I mean, from what you're saying, there's science and technology at the sort of left-hand end of the spectrum, which could be brought forth and brought through. And at the other end of the spectrum, there's this, as you said, this systems of systems integration management role to sort of play and corral other sector responses to global challenges as well. Is that a fair characterization, do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of characterizing it, and in that there's the full range of things that the industry can bring to bear, from just breakthrough technologies or improvements in existing technologies, all the way to the complex system engineering at the scale needed, and putting together the diverse groups of people that are needed to address some of the global challenges. So I think that was a really good way of characterizing what they can bring.
So what do you think, Charles, has stopped the sector from widespread engagement in the global challenge space hitherto?
Yeah, I think that they try, I think, and you certainly see cases. I'm most familiar with Lockheed Martin. I see technologies such as tidal energy or new forms of flow batteries for energy storage. There are things that they try doing, but I think that there are some fundamental structural issues that prevent them from really going after these challenges. And it's interesting in that in the aerospace industry, particularly in the defense, we're used to our customer, which is the government, paying for the development of products. So, for example, with the F-35, the government has paid us to develop the F-35, and then they buy the F-35s that they paid us to develop. And this is in sharp contrast to commercial market space, where you put your money at risk. You think that there's a market for a product that you have, and based on your best estimate and knowledge, you develop that product, and then people either buy it or not. Well, the defense industry is not used to putting their money at risk. That's something that it's not that they don't like risk. They handle a lot of technology risk. It's like very risky things they're doing. But when it comes to the financial aspect and the risk of the finances, that's something where they're much more conservative. So I think that has been a fundamental structural issue that has prevented full investment by the aerospace and defense companies in these sort of technologies that, they're not really sure, well, are they going to sell them, or are there going to be better competitors? What's really going to happen? And, and the cases I've seen at Lockheed, like I mentioned with the tidal wave, and there's some biogas, electricity generation and other things like that. I think they probably could be doing better than we had hoped. I don't really know the details.
Sure. So, I mean, in general terms, this is, I think, hard for most people to get their heads around. I mean, after all, we're talking about the sector that's put men on the moon. And yet, here we are in the 21st century talking about a sector that has, by and large, become risk averse when it comes to playing in certain technology markets, and also in its sort of interface with customers. That's quite hard for people to get their heads around. What do you think it will take to get these companies, these large aerospace and defense companies, to be more risk embracing, to want to engage these big, important global challenge spaces?
Well, I mean, what would help the most would be what our customer does, what the government does, to be honest. I mean, we do a very good job at listening to our customer, and if the customer, and I really view the customer as you and I, right? It's our taxpayer money that pays for our defense. And so I'm not sure what it would take to get the government to want to leverage all the great technology that the public has paid for over all these years, to build upon that to address some of these global challenges that we see. And they are just they seem limitless and intractable, but it also seemed really hard to put a man on the moon too, or to build an atom bomb. And we figured out how to do that, and and we can do that again, but we need the right encouragement, I think. There's also I don't know, I always felt like it was our duty to work on some of these challenges that other people weren't going to work on. Things that maybe are super high risk but could have super high payoffs. And I felt like, today it's very hard to get traction on some of these super high risk ideas that might not work. I think of things like harvesting forces from vacuum fluctuations, and coming up with new types of propulsion, and maybe a breakthrough way of energy storage, things that people have good scientific basis for, but does it really pay off or really turn into something in the end? Well, it's probably not going to be in the kind of 3-year, 5-year VC timeframe. It's not. You don't see the corporate labs like we used to have, like Bell Labs or Xerox PARC, where a lot of the things that we love and use today were developed there, and there wasn't as much. There's a little more freedom to pursue some of these things that are disruptive and not really known.
Sure.
So I always felt we had a duty in the aerospace industry. We should go do that. If we weren't going to do it, who was going to do it?
Well, I think that's the key question, isn't it? If the aerospace and defense community isn't going to, then who is? Given its track record in, frontier breakthrough science, I mean, it does seem incumbent on the industry that you and I have come from, that it should be looking at this stuff. But I like the way you've characterized it there. And of course, it's something I'm acutely aware of, which is that, we, the taxpayer, have paid for a lot of this science and technology. And I always saw this science and technology as a sort of great big mass of potential below a waterline, the waterline, if you view it kind of as an iceberg. So it seems to me too as if governments are blissfully unaware that they have this asset that they can tap into. We've probably touched on areas of this before, Charles, but how do you think we get the governments, or not just your government, but governments across the world, to understand that this untapped asset exists and to liberate it, to draw it forth from this huge industry itself?
Yeah, that's really that's our challenge, right? I mean, that is a very hard challenge, and maybe it takes a groundswell from people,
yeah,
to inform the governments, because, the government for the people, by the people. And so, I think if it takes the people to bring this to the attention of the government and to their representatives, and whatever form of government they have, that hey, there's something here, this is important. And and I know there's a lot of people in the aerospace and defense industry very passionate about this, and and really wanting to work on these sort of technologies. So there's a huge population of people in the industry that would be passionate about it. On the other side, there's people that are very passionate about the global challenges and the need to do something. Maybe it's bringing those two different communities together. And then maybe also with some popular support of people down in those two camps. That is what it would take to get the governments to do some action. And I tell you also, in my dealings, at least here in the U.S., with the different government agencies like AFRL and ONR and DARPA, and the Army. Actually, there's a lot of people that really are all about this sort of innovation in the rank, and the people doing the work and the rank and file. So there's also a large group in these organizations that fund research that would be all for this kind of thing, but that they need to they follow directions, right? So there need, like you said, if there needs to be some sort of government sort of forcing function to make this happen, and how do you force the government to do something that's from the people? So I'm sorry, that's a kind of a long-winded answer, a very complicated challenge that, but really is at the heart of the matter.
Well, I think, as you said, it is about bringing these two sides together. On the one hand, you've got the aerospace and defense community itself, and then you've got the global challenge community, and perhaps recognition on both sides' parts that there is a coming together to be had here. But maybe there's a third factor as well, which is we have a new generation of workforce coming through. There's a millennial and Generation Z workforce coming through. You must have, just before you retired from the Skunk Works, you must have encountered sort of the bow wave of that new generation coming through. Did you detect, or do you think now that there is an appetite amongst that workforce coming through for a sort of change in the traditional way of doing A&D business, and that global challenge marketplaces might represent a good, new, purposeful challenge for this generation?
Yeah, I must say that I found that the new folks coming into the industry were really pretty amazing. They were very talented, very articulate, very motivated, and they were also motivated to not do the things the way we always did things. And they weren't afraid to speak up. So I am very bullish on the new generation coming into the industry. I was very impressed. And so, yeah, I think you make a really good point, is encouraging the new generation and having the new generation see what the aerospace and defense industry can do, and that sort of innovations that we can bring to bear would really help twofold. Not only getting A&D to tackle global challenges, but it would help A&D recruit more talent, which they really need. If you look, right now in the midst of the pandemic, one of the industries that's hiring a lot of people is the aerospace and defense industry. There's still a lot of job openings, and they're holding virtual job fairs, and they need really good, talented people. And so this sort of working on this type of mission, in addition to the defense mission, and working on innovative technologies that can maybe be more openly discussed, would really attract some of the best and brightest to the industry. So I think, yeah, it, it really would help from both aspects.
Of course, it's important, I think, for us to say that no one is advocating here that anyone walks away from defence. I mean, it's a very important,
Right.
very important thing. But I think what you're saying, and I agree, is that this is, you know, the global challenge market space is an adjacent sector that the industry can very capably look to as an additional source of revenue. Would that be right?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. You know, it's not a completely altruistic thing that we're talking about here. There is a huge market, and the market is only going to grow as time goes on. And I think that, in my mind, the aerospace industry would be foolish not to get on top of this market, because they could be a really major player in this market, and they can make a lot of money. Um, and you know, that's another aspect, is trying to get aerospace to focus on this sort of thing, is bringing to bear, pointing out how large the market actually is. You know, it's trillions of dollars. You know, it's not a small market. It's going to be more than $1 trillion market.
Could you just sort of succinctly recapture that thought about acting as a stimulus for the economy as we come out of coronavirus?
Yeah, I think that the pandemic has given a lot of people a chance to consider what they're doing, consider what's important, consider maybe some structural changes that can be made to really improve society and people's lives. So I think it really opens up what I like to think of as a soft spot. And I can't think of a better time to try to encourage this change or this additional function of the aerospace and defense industry than now. I think that it's really maybe a really prime, opportune time to try to take on that challenge and encourage some change.
And finally, Charles, do you get a sense, and you know, this is not a question just for aerospace and defense people, but for all of us, do you get a sense that here we are wrestling with pandemic? You know, it's a huge seismic challenge to us all. Do you get a sense that coming out of this, there'll be an appetite for new ideas, change, you know, new opportunities? I mean, we've touched on that already, but sort of almost like a new mood to try and create this better world that, you know, we've been talking about.
Yeah, so I really think so, and I'm always the optimist, and I you know, and I hope so, because we certainly can make things better for each other, and that's it's kind of the function of the nonprofit that we have. It's called the UnLab, and it stands for unlimited abundance, and we really believe in that abundance truly is unlimited. And I think that this pause in society will help us reconsider what it really means to have abundance, and maybe work a bit more together on creating that abundance for everybody. That's what I'm hoping.
Well, that's a fantastic sentiment to end on. It's been great talking to you. Thanks so much for this.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Nick.
I'll look forward to catching you soon. Take care, Charles. Thanks so much.